Chosen ones, 5 signs your energy is skyrocketing in difficult times. Have you ever felt like your entire life was being shaken apart? And yet beneath the chaos there was a strange sense of clarity, of power, of something waking up inside you that you didn't even know was there. Maybe you're in the middle of one of the hardest seasons of your life. Maybe you've lost people, lost direction, lost comfort. And yet, there's a part of you that isn't breaking, it's building. It's like your soul is stepping forward while the rest of the world is falling away. That right there is the call of the chosen one awakening in real time. And what most people don't realize is this: when everything looks like it's falling apart around you, that's often the sign that your energy is skyrocketing. Not in spite of your pain, but because of it. We've been conditioned to believe that growth looks peaceful, that healing feels good, that awakening is some serene, candlelit process. But for those of us who are truly chosen, the path doesn't begin with light, it begins with fire. It begins with loss. It begins with confusion. Because before your energy can rise, everything blocking it has to be shaken loose. The lies you told yourself, the identities you wore to survive, the relationships that kept you small, the patterns that numbed your soul, all of it has to go, and that release feels like destruction. But it's not. It's transformation. And if you're feeling that now you're not being punished, you're being activated.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The first sign your energy is skyrocketing is this: you feel more alone than ever before. And this is not simple isolation. It's a divine loneliness, a soulful distance from everything that once comforted you, the friends who no longer feel aligned, the distractions that no longer work, the conversations that feel hollow. You might even find yourself pulling away from people not because you want to, but because your energy is outgrowing the frequency of your old life. You're not crazy for feeling this. You're not broken. You're being recalibrated. Because when your energy begins to rise, it starts pulling you away from the noise and into the silence of your own becoming. This is the cocoon, the void, the sacred in-between space where the old you dies and the real you begins to breathe. But the second sign is even more confusing. You feel everything. Emotions hit you harder. You cry without knowing why. You wake up with a heaviness that doesn't belong to just you. You sense things in people's energy before they speak. You feel the grief of the collective, the aching of the world, and the shadow of things not yet revealed. This isn't you being weak. This is your energetic field expanding. You're becoming more sensitive because you're becoming more aware. You're tuning into levels of frequency most people can't access because they're still numbing themselves with distraction. And yes, it can feel overwhelming, but it's also a superpower because this sensitivity is the gateway to intuition, to spiritual precision, to truth. The third sign is that your body starts to change in ways that don't always make sense. You're tired at strange times. You can't eat what you used to. Your sleep is disrupted. Old injuries flare up. Your nervous system feels like it's running on lightning. That's not a coincidence. When your energy skyrockets, it doesn't just shift your spirit, it shifts your cells. Your physical vessel is being upgraded to handle a higher frequency. Imagine your body has been operating on 110 volts, and suddenly your soul is pouring in 1000 volts of divine current. Things short circuit. Things purge. Things detox. And while doctors may not always find something wrong, you know something's happening. Because your body is not malfunctioning, it's evolving. The fourth sign is that you start letting go of things without even trying. You don't even have to force it. You just wake up one day and realize you no longer want that habit, that job, that relationship, that identity. It's like your soul is silently sweeping the house while your ego is still trying to hold onto the furniture. Let the clearing happen. Don't resist, because every time your energy rises, it aligns you more closely with your truth, and truth has no room for what's false. Letting go doesn't mean you're losing. It means you're making space for what matches your new vibration. This is how timelines collapse. This is how you step into quantum leaps, not by chasing but by releasing. And the fifth sign, may be the most powerful but the hardest to explain, is this: synchronicities start to flood your life. Numbers, symbols, recurring dreams, conversations that feel like messages, songs that hit you like revelations, people showing up out of nowhere who say exactly what you needed to hear, doors opening where there were walls. These aren't coincidences. They're confirmations. They're the universe's way of aligning with your inner shift. Because when your energy rises, the external matrix responds, reality bends, time speeds up, manifestations accelerate. And what once took months or years suddenly shows up in days, even hours. But this only happens when you're fully present, when you've surrendered control and started trusting the process more than the plan. Let me ask you something that could change everything. Are you mistaking your activation for a breakdown? Are you still looking at your pain like it's a punishment when it's really a passage? What if the chaos you're experiencing isn't a sign that you're off track, but that you've finally stepped into your truth? Because here's the truth no one tells you: chosen ones don't rise in perfect conditions. We rise in the rubble, in the ruins, in the moments where everything comfortable disappears and all that's left is you. That's where the power begins. That's where your energy stops hiding and starts soaring. You're not falling apart. You're waking up. And your energy, it's not just rising, it's skyrocketing. When the world turns against you, your light gets louder. There's a moment in every chosen one's journey when the very world you've been trying to uplift suddenly starts pushing back. It feels like rejection. It feels like betrayal. It feels like the people you thought would support your growth are the very ones who distance themselves when your light starts to shine a little too brightly. And it hurts because you didn't ask for this path out of ego. You didn't choose this life to be worshipped or feared. You chose it because something in you had to awaken. But as your energy rises, as your frequency begins to crack through the false layers of reality, something almost predictable happens: resistance. The world starts to mirror your expansion with friction. And that's when you know you're on the verge of something massive. You have to understand something sacred. Your light is not passive. It's not soft. It doesn't whisper. When it's real, when it's activated, it disrupts. It shines into places others have kept dark for years, maybe lifetimes. It exposes wounds. It rattles masks. It forces people to feel things they've spent their entire lives avoiding. And when that happens, their instinct isn't always to evolve with you. Often, it's to reject you. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your presence is a reminder of everything they've buried. You don't even have to say a word. Just your energy begins to challenge the status quo, and the status quo doesn't go down without a fight. So when the world turns against you, when people misjudge you, question your motives, twist your words, or even ghost you altogether, breathe. Don't react. Don't fall into explaining yourself. That's the trap. That's the test. Your ego will want to defend, to prove, to be understood. But your soul knows better. Your soul knows that this is not rejection, it's refinement. It's not about them. It's about what's being activated in you. When you begin to embody your truth unapologetically, the universe tests your roots. It asks, can you stand in your light even when it costs you everything comfortable? Let me ask you something deep, something disruptive. What part of you still needs external permission to believe in your own power? What part of you is still trying to negotiate with your old self to keep others comfortable? Because the real shift happens when you stop needing the world to reflect your worth. When you stop begging for a seat at a table you were meant to rebuild. You are not here to fit in. You are here to reformat the frequency of this dimension. You are here to be a living transmission of what alignment looks like in the flesh. And that means you will trigger people. You will be misunderstood. You will walk through seasons where you feel like no one sees you, no one gets you, no one walks with you. But that doesn't mean you're alone. It means you're being carved into clarity. This loneliness is not emptiness. It's spaciousness. It's the sacred clearing of illusions. Because in that space, your real tribe begins to find you. Not the crowd that claps for the mask, but the soul family that recognizes your code. The ones who don't need you to explain your intensity because they feel it. They live it. They are it. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more the world pushes against your light, the louder your light becomes. Because pressure doesn't break chosen ones, it activates us. It polishes us. It makes us precise. Every misunderstanding sharpens your discernment. Every betrayal strengthens your boundaries. Every loss becomes a portal to more truth. You stop chasing peace and you become peace. You stop seeking validation and you radiate certainty. And eventually the world stops being something you fear and starts becoming something you influence. This is when your energy starts doing things you didn't expect. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere. You speak and people feel it in their bones. You think something and it manifests. You become so aligned that your mere presence becomes a transmission, not because you're trying. Because you've finally stopped denying. You've allowed yourself to become the vessel, the lighthouse, the example. And that's what makes you unstoppable. So yes, it will get lonely. Yes, you'll be tested. Yes, the world will challenge you right before it celebrates you. But that's the divine pattern. That's the path of the chosen. We don't rise through comfort. We rise through contrast. And every time you're pushed, every time you're doubted, every time you walk alone, you're being positioned. Not for attention, not for applause, but for impact. You don't need to be louder. You just need to be truer. You don't need to convince anyone of your light. Just be it. Let your energy do the talking. Let your essence be the proof. The quiet superpowers you gain when your spirit breaks open. There's a moment in the evolution of a chosen one that no one really prepares you for. It's not the rise, it's not the victory, it's the crack, the fracture, the breaking open of everything you thought you were. It's that moment when you hit the ground soul first and realize that you can't go back to who you were, even if you wanted to. And honestly, part of you does want to, because the old identity was safe, predictable, familiar. But the truth is, you've outgrown it. That old self was never built to hold the magnitude of your real power. So it has to break. And when it does, when your spirit finally shatters, it doesn't mean you're ruined. It means you're finally real. This kind of breaking isn't loud. It doesn't always come with screaming or chaos. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it looks like you sitting on the edge of your bed, staring into nothing, trying to figure out why you feel so empty when you've done everything right. Sometimes it's a subtle moment of surrender, a quiet whisper to the universe through tears. I don't know who I am anymore. That's not weakness. That's not failure. That's your soul waking up after lifetimes of being asleep in someone else's dream. And here's the sacred paradox. When your spirit breaks open, you don't lose power, you gain superpowers. Not the kind that dazzle crowds, not the kind that stroke the ego. These are quiet powers, deep powers. The kind of powers that shift timelines without needing to raise your voice. The first superpower is clarity. When your soul breaks, the illusions fall with it. You stop seeing life through the lens of what you were taught, and you start seeing it through the lens of truth. You suddenly notice the difference between noise and alignment, between attention and resonance, between love and attachment. And it's not because you learned it in a book, it's because your spirit carved that truth into your bones through experience. Another superpower you gain is emotional precision. You no longer get stuck in endless loops of reaction. You begin to feel everything without letting it own you. You cry when you need to, not because you're weak, but because you're fluid. You rage when it's sacred, not because you're out of control, but because you're alive. You start to notice when an emotion is yours and when it's someone else's energy clinging to your field. You become a master of your own emotional reality, not by suppressing it, but by honoring it with awareness. And then there's intuition. Real, raw, unfiltered knowing, not guesswork, not hope. Knowing. You start picking up on vibrations that others miss. You walk into a room and feel the story behind the smiles. You meet someone and instantly know the contract your soul has with them. You begin to trust the gut feelings, the dreams, the signs, the synchronicities, because you've seen how real they are, how precise they become when your ego finally steps out of the way. That's not magic. That's alignment. That's what happens when your spirit is no longer trying to protect its cracks because it knows the light comes through them. Let me ask you something that might cut deep. What would happen if you stopped trying to hold yourself together and let yourself fall into truth? What would happen if you stopped resisting the break and let it make you boundless? Most people fear the breaking because they think it's the end. But for a chosen one, the break is the birth. It's the moment your false self dies and your real self begins. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it's confusing. But it's also the gateway to your real mission. Because you cannot carry divine power in a vessel that is still clinging to lies. You cannot embody your higher calling while still performing for lower energies. The break is the universe's way of saying, we need the real you now. The world's ready. And perhaps the most underestimated superpower you gain in this breaking is compassion. Not the soft, performative kind, the fierce kind. The kind that knows pain intimately and chooses love anyway. The kind that holds space for others without enabling their illusions. You've been through the fire. You've walked through the valley. And now you can sit with someone in their darkness without flinching, without judging, without trying to fix them, because you know the darkness is not the enemy. It's the womb. This is how you become a guide, a healer, a lighthouse. Not because you claim the title, but because your presence carries the frequency of someone who has returned. Someone who has died and come back more awake. Someone who knows that power doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers through the cracks of your soul and says, you're still here, and that is enough. You're not becoming powerful, you're remembering you always were. There's a cosmic lie that so many of us unconsciously buy into, the idea that we have to become powerful. That power is something outside of us, something we must earn, chase, build, or borrow. But for the chosen ones, the truth is far more radical. You're not becoming powerful. You're remembering that you always were. The work isn't in the gaining, it's in the unveiling. The peeling back of every false story, every inherited limitation, every scarred identity that convinced you to forget. And the moment you begin to remember, the game changes, not because the world gets easier, but because you become unshakable. You see, your power isn't loud. It's not boastful. It doesn't need to dominate. Real power, the kind that lives in the bones of chosen ones, is sovereign. It doesn't react. It doesn't prove. It simply is. You walk into a space and the energy bends around you. Not because you're trying, but because you're aligned. This kind of power isn't about controlling the external. It's about mastering the internal. And when you do that, everything begins to respond to you on a quantum level. People feel it. Situations shift. Opportunities arrive, not because you forced them, but because your frequency became a magnet for what matches your soul's truth. But remembering your power means you must stop outsourcing your authority. You must stop handing your intuition over to the opinions of others. You must stop waiting for someone else to affirm what your soul already knows. You don't need a guru. You don't need a savior. You don't need a system. All of those can guide you, point you, reflect you, but none of them complete you. You were whole before you were wounded. You were powerful before you were praised or rejected. Your soul didn't come here to be fixed. It came here to unfold, to express, to embody. So ask yourself this: how much of your life have you spent trying to earn what was already yours? How many times have you looked outside of yourself for the very thing your higher self has been whispering all along? The remembering begins in silence, in stillness, in presence. When you stop chasing and start listening. When you sit with yourself, not your thoughts, not your roles, not your ego, but your essence. That sacred presence behind the noise. That's where your power lives. Not in the future version of you, not in the healed version of you, but right here, right now, beneath the pain, beneath the projections, beneath the fear. And when you touch it, when you truly feel the ancient knowing within you, it will feel less like a discovery and more like a homecoming. This remembering will not make you invincible in the way the world defines it. Life will still throw storms. People will still leave. The system will still resist, but you'll no longer collapse when it happens. You'll no longer question your worth when things fall apart. Because you'll know nothing that's real can be lost, and nothing that's aligned with your truth will ever require you to betray yourself to keep it. This is the quiet revolution of the chosen ones. We don't need to scream. We don't need to convince. We simply embody. We walk in rooms and rewire frequencies. We breathe, and the air starts remembering its sacredness. We touch hearts without needing to speak. And when we speak, our words carry the momentum of lifetimes of truth. We are not here to follow trends. We are here to anchor timelines, to plant new codes into the fabric of reality, to be the proof that it's possible to live from soul, not survival. And yes, this path is rare, it's lonely, it's intense, but it's also liberating, because once you remember who you are, you can never unremember. You can never go back to pretending. You can never again fit into places you've transcended. And that's not a loss. That's your return. So if you're feeling the pressure, the friction, the disconnection from your old life, good, it means the remembering has begun. It means the veil is lifting. It means your soul is reclaiming the voice it once gave away in the name of belonging. You've never been broken. You've never been behind. You've never been lost. You've just been asleep to your own magnitude. But now you're waking up, and as you rise, so does the world around you. Because when a chosen one remembers, nothing stays the same.